Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the PHMSA Public Awareness Workshop. My name is Alan Mabry. I'm the Acting Associate Administrator for Pipeline Safety. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you here today to beautiful Chicagoland and actually specifically downtown Chicago, right near the Lake Michigan, very nice area. I haven't had a workshop here in some time, but welcome everyone. I'd like to especially welcome you if you're joining us by webcast. Appreciate your attendance here as well. We've got a full agenda today, so I'll get right into what I have to, kind of overview of the day, and then I'll go through a little introduction on PHMSA. First off, again, thanks. Appreciate your participation. You'll see as we go along, especially those of you by webcast, that there'll be a way for you to participate, which is very important. There's a way on the website for you to there's a link provided for you to send in questions that you may have. So we do encourage participation. And then, of course, those of you that are here in person, it's quite easy. There'll be microphones to ask questions, and then we also have note cards that'll be available as well. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We do have the agenda. It's available for those of you on the web, but also up front at the desk if you don't have it. I would recommend that you get one of these nice agenda with, also has the speaker bios with nice color photos of all of us. And then at the very end, there are restaurant options for the local area for those of you who are with us. So quite a vast selection of restaurants in the back there. So the agenda you'll find quite informative and kind of lays out the day that we have today, the full agenda that we have. Of course, with public awareness, there's certainly an evolving interest, a high interest nowadays, especially as it relates to pipelines and pipeline sightings, pipeline operations. Certainly what's flavored that a bit has been the energy environment and new and non-traditional sources of energy. I guess now we can say they are traditional sources because it's just the way of doing business now with the shale gas plays and other sources that are just creating opportunity for companies and then also creating projects where pipelines are installed to move that product to market. Certainly technology we've seen has certainly changed how we handle public engagement, public awareness with social media, for instance, and other methods that our stakeholders have to communicate, both back and forth with the regulator, with the operator. So that's certainly changed how we work with stakeholders. Certainly the needs and input of stakeholders has varied and increased with the need for additional information, especially with the prevalence of projects that we see today. And they need that to understand risks of pipeline safety. And then as far as moving forward as an agency, and actually as an industry too, we're looking at safety management systems, which you'll hear more about. I would say that will represent a major paradigm shift, much like integrity management did in the 1990s as we went to that. But that represents another way of managing pipeline safety moving forward, because if you really look at the common thread between in accidents that do happen out there, there's an element of management systems that is a common thread in all of them, whether you're looking at San Bruno or Marshall, Michigan, or numerous others that you probably don't know about, but there's an element of management systems, and therefore you hear us speaking more of safety management systems and encouraging operators, the regulated community, to adopt those types of systems. As far as upfront safety and logistics, the emergency exits, we have two. Right to my right, and behind me you'll exit right and right, and then in the back certainly where you came in are exits as well. The restrooms, if you haven't found them already, just out these doors and to the left. And then the evacuation point, assembly point, would be at Northwestern Memorial Hospital nearby. Just pretty obvious, I would say, but if you would, silence your electronic devices. That applies to you, all of you. And then be respectful of speakers and guests. We want to maintain civility in this forum to have a really meaningful dialogue. So we do expect a measure of civility. There's no need to get, upset or, these issues. We're dealing professionally with each other, and let's just maintain a sense of civility as we discuss this important issue today. We will ask disruptive individuals to leave. And we put the hotel on notice to help us in that regard. Don't expect there to be any issues, but just need to mention that up front. All right, well, let me shift gears here a bit and give you a little introduction about PHMSA as we lead into the topic of the day. As you may know, PHMSA is a mode of transportation under the U.S. Department of Transportation. We're alongside our sister agencies like the much larger Federal Aviation Administration, also the Federal Transit Administration, the others you see there listed in this on this slide here. PHMSA is divided into two groups, Office of Hazardous Materials Safety, and then the Office of Pipeline Safety, which I represent, and we represent here. And of course, pipelines are the focus of our discussion today. We're located in 5 region offices, as you can see depicted on this map. We also have a training facility in Oklahoma City. I might add that we're expanding this a bit. We've grown. We're one of the few federal agencies that is actually growing, and quite a bit. We've almost doubled the size of our agency in the last 5 years. And therefore, we're actually adding offices. We added one recently here in the Chicago area. And then the Alaska and Hawaii, by the way, are covered out of our Western Region office. It's headquartered in Lakewood, Colorado, right outside Denver. That's where we operate, to cover the U.S. We also cover Puerto Rico, where there are some regulated facilities out of our office in Atlanta, Georgia. Our mission, and this is our new mission, that we developed this over the course of the last year through a series of executive offsite meetings, is to protect people and the environment by advancing the safe transportation of energy and other hazardous materials that are essential to our daily lives. Now, this mission statement covers both the pipeline side and the hazmat side. We have a common mission in safety. Our focus is safety. Our focus is not the siting of pipelines. However, we do assist siting authorities such as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the states, and local government as they make siting decisions, and we provide assistance in that regard. And that perhaps many of you are well aware of. Our vision is one we aspire for is to be the most innovative transportation organization in the world. And I know John Drake, our Deputy Administrator, will follow, as he follows in providing his remarks, will describe a bit about our PHMSA 2021 strategic plan that outlines how we plan to achieve that, at least in the next 5 years, what we've laid out to improve on a broad variety of broad areas to improve how we plan to achieve that. As far as what we regulate, here's a chart that shows that, overall there are about almost 2.7 million miles of pipelines in the U.S. That varies from, a half-inch service line from a gas main to a house to a 50-inch gas transmission pipeline. So it's quite a bit of infrastructure out there, and then this represents about 500,000 miles of that. This is the blue gas transmission pipelines, and then red represents hazardous liquid pipelines. Again, that's about 500,000 of the 2.6 million miles. Looks much like a road map, really, but maybe even more than a road map, quite dense there in some areas. Some of this they're familiar with, working with the regulations, are quite familiar with it, but we do issue regulations that are listed here. Two in particular that you're familiar with day to day are Part 192 and 195, the gas and the liquid regulations. Of course, the other important ones, 196, which certainly are relevant to today, are protection of underground pipelines from excavation, and that's a big area of focus for us now. I know with Christy and her group on enforcement of excavation or damage prevention in the various states. And then Part 198, damage prevention enforcement programs. Again, similar focus for us. We do perform inspections. We do have inspectors working out of each of our offices, 5 region offices that perform oversight inspections. And then through our partnership with the states, inspections are also performed on the state level of primarily local distribution companies and intrastate pipelines. We monitor and enforce compliance. Certainly we have a variety of enforcement tools at our disposal, from civil penalties to requiring remedial actions through instruments such as corrective action orders. And then there's also a criminal referral process to the Office of the Inspector General for prosecution by the Department of Justice. Fortunately, that one occurs rarely, but that is just there really to show that we have a broad array of tools that are used, and we do use them. What we're here for today is communications. We do work very hard to inform stakeholders about pipeline safety. We do that through workshops, like I said, like this, or one that we're under storage, where we're looking to communicate on the state of underground storage or regulations and help inform where we go with underground storage regulations. And then last year, for instance, we had a workshop on risk modeling. A couple years ago, a workshop on pipeline seam issues. We have R&D forums every 2 years. So again, it's very important for us to collaborate with stakeholders to seek input and establish a public record for that engagement. We do that publicly, the webcasts and the recordings that we do of these events. I view this as kind of the liturgy, sort of, what is our philosophy on carrying out our authority? One is that part that I showed you before, we do establish minimum standards, and I must stress, they are minimum safety standards and we verify how operators perform against these standards. I say minimum because they are a negotiated outcome. We start with a plan A, notice of proposed rulemaking, and how we end up with in the end is the result of comments and input of stakeholders. So the end product typically is not exactly what you started with, but it ends up being rolled up into what we call the minimum federal safety standard. It's really up to the operator to know and understand their system and do what's needed to maintain pipeline safety. In some cases, that may involve going beyond the federal minimum standard that's contained in 192 or 195. And then, of course, we strive to advance awareness beyond those standards that we have, beyond the regulations. We do that through public awareness or through events such as this. And then our focus is on performance, really. It's not, okay, I complied with Part 192 or 195. It's, okay, did you keep the product in the pipeline? Did you perform? And then we're looking for, here's one that we're really looking for, is behavioral change and moving beyond the culture of compliance to a culture of performance. Culture of compliance just says, okay, well, if the pipeline failed, but I followed the regulations. We need to focus on performance and not just focus on that bogey of following 192 or 195. It really, in many cases, like I said, may involve going beyond those standards. Purpose of the workshop, I touched on this a little bit, but really 2 main aspects. First, we are here to listen to each other, and then communicate. We're looking to communicate the findings of the SWOT report that was published recently, and then look for maybe future opportunities to advance public awareness. So therefore, we're listening to and want your ideas on how to advance public outreach efforts and improve in that area. And then just in that regard, we'll communicate actions we'll take. We'll discuss, where we may head regarding public awareness. If you look at the agenda, we, breaking it up into 2 parts. We have, of course, opening remarks. Then we'll ease into, our strategic direction, overview of public awareness, the SWOT report findings, and then discussion between PHMSA and NAPSR on advancing public awareness. Then lunch on your own, again, the list and the agenda for where you may want to go. And then in the afternoon, we'll hear from stakeholders, perspectives on the SWOT report and others. And then what is next, perhaps, with the API's recommended practice 1162 on public awareness. Again, I start with this, your job here today, besides being here, very much appreciate that, is to speak up. We want your input. It's very important. So I mentioned that. We do have index cards. I guess they're at the desk. We'll also make sure that they're available around here. After each panel, there'll be a Q&A session. And then, like I mentioned, for you joining us by webcast, there's a way for you to email your questions in, and we encourage you to do that. The presentations and handouts will be available within 48 hours, and then, of course, we're recording this. It's webcast and being recorded, and that'll be available on YouTube. And then we are accepting comments on the docket. We have the docket number listed there. You can access that at regulations.gov. I believe that's the extent of what I had to cover, introducing you and welcoming you today. Again, I appreciate your participation, and I also would like to add that my partner in crime here, Christy Murray, she's really responsible for this. I just get to get up here and help with kicking it off, but she's really the workhorse behind this, along with her whole CATS team and Karen, coordinator. But if you have any questions throughout the day, any one of us, Christy, Karen, and then also in the back, I see a couple of our CATS people, but feel free to ask any one of the PHMSA people. But appreciate certainly your efforts, Chris, putting on this event. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our Deputy Administrator, John Drake, who will give some opening remarks as well. Thank you.
How are you? Good. So, first, thank you for participating in today's public awareness workshop. As Alan introduced me, I'm the Deputy Administrator for PHMSA, and I'm delighted to both welcome and join you here today on ways to explore how we can collectively move the needle in advancing pipeline safety through public awareness and stakeholder engagement. The theme for this workshop is Each One Outreach to One, to emphasize our individual and collective responsibility in educating, informing, and engaging with pipeline stakeholders in our communities. The key goal of the workshop is for pipeline stakeholders to share ways to advance public awareness efforts through collaboration and focused action. I'm here to listen and learn from you all. So Alan touched on this in his remarks, but the American energy industry is rapidly changing. It's growing and expanding, as are the ways the American public consumes and interacts with the energy and products that we seek to move safely. The nation's pipeline infrastructure is critical to our way of life, filling the majority of our country's total energy consumption. Most of these resources are transported through 2.6 million miles of pipelines that crisscross the nation. We rely on these pipelines and the products in them for economic growth and our everyday. The mission of PHMSA is to protect people and the environment by advancing the safe transportation of energy and other hazardous materials that are essential to our daily lives. PHMSA develops and enforces regulations for the safe operations of our nation's pipeline transportation system, and the nearly 1 million daily shipments of hazardous materials by land, sea, and air. That includes everything from lithium batteries to petroleum products, and basically the building blocks of our lifestyle today. PHMSA is at a pivotal juncture, and as a safety regulator, it is critical for PHMSA to keep pace with and anticipate industry trends and to ensure that, along with the changes, growth, and expansion, there is continued and unwavering commitment to the highest safety standards and informing the public about pipeline safety. And to be frank about this, the American public's expectations on PHMSA has changed significantly in the last 10 years. We know that there's a lot more attention on us and the work that we do every day. We know that there's a lot more sensitivity about what it means to be moving energy in this country as America continues to grow to be one of the top energy-producing countries in the world. And so we are actively working now to change so that we can adapt to these changes and these heightened expectations. While we are adapting and operating in this dynamic environment, though, this changing energy and transportation landscape increases the scope and complexity of the agency's mission, as well as the public reliance on our and more productive and proactive. PHMSA is undergoing a transformation internally to better align our agency to more effectively deliver on our mission and fill key gaps in mission-critical capabilities. In recent months, PHMSA has implemented a number of initiatives to advance our mission, and the agency is structured for the future. As Alan shared in his welcome, we've updated our mission and vision to clearly communicate to our pipeline safety stakeholders that safety is paramount to advancing pipeline safety. Fundamental to okay, that's good. Fundamental to this is working with all stakeholders to advance our pipeline. Our safety mission is what drives PHMSA and our dedicated and committed professionals who diligently advance pipeline safety through collaboration and stakeholder engagement. In the context of this changing environment, we have also updated the agency's strategic framework under PHMSA 2021, which is a new direction for PHMSA that focuses on strategic investments in people and processes and restructures the agency. As part of PHMSA 2021, we have developed a bold new vision statement to be the most innovative transportation safety organization in the world. The team has also developed strategic goals and objectives that better reflect the agency's focus on our three core principles: safety, innovation, and trust, which encompasses the idea of a safety as a shared responsibility and how essential PHMSA's safety mission is to the daily lives of Americans. The 5 goals that enable this new framework under PHMSA 2021 are: 1, promote continuous improvement in safety performance, including establishing a framework and approach for implementing safety management systems. 2, invest in safety innovation, become more proactive and forward-looking by building PHMSA's innovation and analytics capabilities and through partnerships. This allows us to be proactive as opposed to reactive, trying to better anticipate and address challenges as they emerge, as opposed to after they have already emerged on the stage. 3, build stakeholder and public trust through proactive and targeted outreach, engagement, responsiveness, and transparency. 4, cultivate organizational excellence and safety culture by investing in employees and key responsibilities, strengthening PHMSA's culture. And 5, pursue operational excellence through consistent and efficient business processes and by transforming how PHMSA leverages data to drive decision-making. The organizational changes and strategic investments under PHMSA 2021 lay the foundation for PHMSA to become a more forward-looking, proactive, innovative, and data-driven organization. These and future changes will continue PHMSA's development into a next-generation safety agency and will further enable PHMSA and other stakeholders to advance pipeline safety exponentially. The Public Awareness Program also provides an opportunity to combat major pipeline safety concerns in a proactive manner. With today's changing energy and transportation landscape, it is essential for the collective pipeline safety community to continuously evaluate how, what, when, and where we communicate to keep the public informed and safe. One of the ways we're doing this is through our Community Assistance and Technical Services Program, or CATS. This program works to advance public safety, environmental protection, and pipeline reliability by facilitating clear communications among all pipeline stakeholders, including the public, the operators, and government officials. And I know that Karen Lynch is going to be talking about this a little bit later today, but I just want to take this opportunity to recognize our CATS program folks who are actually in the room. If I could just ask them to stand really quickly. So these are the folks who are out there in the field. They are oftentimes, I think, your first and primary point of contact in terms of understanding how our regulations work. They are all throughout the country. They often attend events in helping the public understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And they are an amazing resource, not just for the public, but also for myself and everyone else in PHMSA as well. So thank you. Today's public awareness workshop is timely. At this workshop, we seek to gather input from the public and other stakeholders to improve public awareness outreach and effectiveness efforts. Through today's workshop, we will provide an overview of public awareness, discuss key findings from the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats report, and most importantly, discuss specific actions that PHMSA will take to improve public awareness requirements for pipeline operators and to expand and amplify our broader outreach and awareness efforts. You will also hear from other pipeline stakeholders who will share ideas, best practices, and opportunities to advance public awareness. We are here to learn. PHMSA values and will continue to create opportunities to educate and engage with all pipeline stakeholders to collaborate on ideas and actions that enhance pipeline safety and expand transparency through proactive and targeted outreach, engagement, and responsiveness. Public education and outreach is vital to reducing pipeline risks and is critical to engage local communities in the pipeline safety processes and decisions that affect their daily lives. To be an effective regulatory and enforcement agency amid all these rapid changes that we are facing today, it is critical that we continue to be innovative and nimble. We are striving to make innovation the heart of everything that we do, from the development of our regulations, to research and development, to engaging with our stakeholders and being more transparent. We are committed to working with all stakeholders to improve safety. As a testament to this endeavor, PHMSA led a collaborative public awareness program working group to develop a SWOT report that was released to the public in May. This diverse group of pipeline stakeholders assessed the current state of pipeline public awareness to offer findings that stakeholders can leverage to improve pipeline safety through strategic action. Another way we're working to improve transparency and engagement is by holding forums like today's workshop. One of our goals here today is to receive your input on how we can update regulations regarding public awareness and also take in additional recommendations and directions on how we can further improve what we're doing with the public on a daily basis. The American energy industry is rapidly changing, it's growing and expanding, but one thing remains constant: PHMSA's commitment to public and pipeline safety. As we focus on pipeline safety, we are committed to transparency and consistent communication with our stakeholders, partners, and the American public. PHMSA is moving forward with a renewed vision and spirit, and we are laying the building blocks to regulate our industry more effectively. As we identify specific actions at today's workshop, we want to ensure the public awareness requirements and collective efforts to keep pace with changes in technology in the energy industry. While public awareness might change or evolve over time, the goals remain the same: enhance public safety, environmental and property protection through increased public awareness and participation, and knowledge to engage stakeholders in improving pipeline safety. Our goal is to ensure the public remains involved and engaged in the processes and also understand those processes, and that the messages reach our stakeholders in a manner that can best be received and understood. Thank you again for being here today. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you, and thank you.
Testing.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Karen Gentili, and I am one of the Community Assistance and Technical Services Managers. And this morning I'm going to be providing you with an overview of public awareness and the results of the public awareness inspections that have been performed over the past few years. I'll briefly go over the regulatory requirements for public awareness. I'll talk about the process for conducting and tracking inspections and how that's changed over the years. And then I'll review some of the findings from our more recent inspections. And then I'll wrap things up by leaving you with some website resources that you might find interesting if you're looking to find out more about public awareness. If I were to come up with my own definition of public awareness as it relates to public safety, it would be educating people about what they need to know about pipeline facilities so that they can better understand their purpose and operation, protect them from damage, recognize if something is wrong, and know what to do in the event of a release. People have all kinds of questions related to pipelines and pipeline safety. And there are federal pipeline safety regulations specific to public awareness which require pipeline operators to develop and implement written public continuing education programs. The regulatory requirements specific to public awareness are covered in Title 49, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 192, Part 192, 616 for natural gas pipelines, and 195, 440 for regulated hazardous liquid pipelines. And these regulations include the requirements for pipeline operators to develop and implement public awareness programs that follow the guidance that is provided in the first edition of American Petroleum Institute Recommended Practice 1162 for both the baseline as well as supplemental requirements. So let's take a look at this high-level timeline, which notes some of the key regulatory requirements and events. There haven't been any changes to the public awareness regulations for some time. The regulations, as we know them today, came into existence back in May of 2005, and most operators were required to have written public awareness programs in place by June of 2006. So that starts this timeline here. Also in June of 2006, PHMSA issued an advisory bulletin to tell operators how to submit their public awareness programs for PHMSA's clearinghouse review. API RP 1162 specifies that pipeline operators are required to evaluate their programs for effectiveness, no more than 4 years apart. So that brings you, operators should have conducted their first round of effectiveness evaluations by June of 2010. Following this first 4-year implementation cycle, PHMSA and state regulators performed targeted inspections on all operators' programs. And then PHMSA hosted a public workshop right here in June of 2013. Following this workshop, PHMSA convened the Public Awareness Program Working Group in September of 2003. And what this group did is it worked to review public awareness data and information and performed a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or SWOT analysis. And we issued a report of key findings in May of this past year. You'll hear more about the SWOT report from Dr. Murray following my presentation. The public awareness inspections have been ongoing. The clearinghouse review was a high-level review of operators' programs. When operators were due to have their first round of effectiveness evaluations, again back in that June 2010 timeframe, the federal and state inspectors performed targeted inspections of all operators' public awareness programs. And these inspections took a more detailed look at operators' programs and records to include their annual implementation reviews as well as their effectiveness evaluations to make sure that operators had implemented their programs in accordance with the regulations. And these targeted inspections were completed by 2013. However, public awareness as well as inspection is an ongoing process. PHMSA performs a variety of inspections, investigations, and other activities to check that pipeline operators are constructing, operating, and maintaining their pipelines in compliance with the pipeline safety regulations. And while these pipeline regulations for public awareness haven't changed, PHMSA and state inspectors are still inspecting to these same regulatory requirements. However, the methodology for how we're conducting inspections has evolved. Before I get into information on inspections and the enforcement actions taken, I thought that it would be beneficial for you to all understand a little bit about how PHMSA's way of conducting inspections has evolved. PHMSA has shifted from conducting focused, targeted inspections on sections of pipe grouped geographically into topical areas. And those targeted topical areas, you'll see some of those topical areas listed here, to performing integrated inspections, or IIs. And what an II does is it incorporates all of these elements into one big umbrella. And the topics and portions of pipelines inspected are selected based on risk information. So as the inspection methodology has changed, so has the method for documenting and tracking these inspections. Back in 2006, when operators were required to have their public awareness programs in place, PHMSA was using a standard inspection form for conducting these inspections. This form included a section for public awareness, but it was literally a paper word-based form that had a section checking certain elements. Come 2010, when operators should have conducted their first round of effectiveness evaluations, PHMSA developed a specific form focused on public awareness, along with enforcement guidance and a database for tracking the results of these public awareness inspections that both federal and state inspectors performed. So PHMSA continues to conduct operators' inspections on public awareness programs under the II umbrella. But instead of using the old paper form, an application called the Inspection Assistant was developed. And it's used by PHMSA as well as some of our state inspectors. And what the Inspection Assistant is it's a compilation of all the items and topics that are covered in the regulations. And it's like an inspector's toolbox. The inspector can tailor the questions in their toolbox based on risk. So if you go to the forms that are posted on PHMSA's website and you open the public awareness form that's there, what you'll see is the questions that are in the Inspection Assistant toolbox. The state programs can elect to use this integrated inspection tool, the Inspection Assistant, or they can use their own forms for inspection for their state jurisdictional assets. Towards the end of my presentation, I will provide you with information on where you can go to find all of the PHMSA inspection forms. This table summarizes the number of PHMSA and interstate inspections that have been performed since 2009. In 2009 and 2010, we were doing primarily those targeted inspections using the older inspection forms. And while these inspections, again, included public awareness, there wasn't a way to electronically count the number of inspections which addressed that public awareness question set. As you can see, we had a significant increase in inspections in the 2011 and 2012 timeframe. And this is when, again, PHMSA developed the targeted public awareness inspections and had a focused effort on inspecting all of operators' programs. Additionally, as PHMSA began shifting from those standard inspections to the integrated inspections and using the Inspection Assistant, this gave us the ability to track the question sets that were being asked during those inspections. And right now, PHMSA uses the Inspection Assistant for documenting all of their inspection results. This slide shows the enforcement cases that have been generated from 2010 to present. As you can see, there was the spike following the targeted round of inspections. If you drill down and look at each of the paragraphs cited under the public awareness regulations, you'll see that there was a large amount of paragraph A's that were cited in the enforcement cases. But there were violations cited for each and every paragraph under the public awareness regulations. Again, the majority with paragraph A, as well as the top 4 paragraphs, A, B, C, and D. Those were weighted more heavily. If we take a closer look at the findings from the state and federal inspections, there were some reoccurring shortfalls that were observed with the overall program administration and development of public awareness programs. Inspectors identified instances where the operator didn't identify the pipeline facilities and the product or products covered by the system. Some pipeline operators have multiple operators that fall under an operator's public awareness program, and they also might have multiple products. So it's important that the program clearly identify what is covered under a particular public awareness program. Inspectors also found issues related to the required statement of management support. In some cases, the statement was missing, and in other instances, it wasn't current. The management had changed, but the statement hadn't been updated. Additionally, we found instances where a management support statement was signed by a person who didn't have oversight over the pipeline facilities. Another finding that we had was the first edition of API RP 1162 is the version that's incorporated by reference. And some operators were using a later edition of 1162. And programs lacked detail on the who's, the what's, the when's, the where's, the how's, the why's. Who's responsible for the program administration? Who executes the different parts of the program? Do they use a third-party contractor? What data is analyzed? How are things documented? Is there any QA/QC performed? Inspections also revealed a lack of consideration for unique attributes. While pipeline operators might not consider their facilities and their products unique, the public doesn't necessarily know the difference between such things as the natural gas distribution line that supplies gas to their homes or a natural gas transmission line. Or they might not know what a compressor station is that is located in their neighborhood. So in some instances, operators had one brochure that covered an entire multi-product system. And the brochure didn't distinguish between some of the differences, the chemical and physical properties of the products in the pipeline, or consider all the products that were present. They might not be present in all locations. Information also revealed that some messages didn't match the product. For example, a crude oil pipeline had hissing and dense fog listed as an indication of a leak. While this might be appropriate for a propane leak, it's not usually indicative of a crude oil spill. Some operators also use the same generic information for natural gas pipelines, whether they be odorized or unodorized. And then there were some inspections that found that operators did little to promote an understanding of the nature of their facilities, the types of pipelines, above-ground facilities, or the information on things that might occur at the facilities, such as variable amounts of noise emanating from an intermittent operations, or varying throughputs, or events such as blowdowns or emergency shutdown events. So while an operator understands all these things, the public might not. Inspections also revealed some operators lacked a clearly defined process for stakeholder identification. The who, the how, and the when for each of the 4 stakeholder audiences. The 4 stakeholder audiences are the public, public officials, emergency responders, and excavators. In some cases, operators use buffers to determine the stakeholders that are sent public awareness messages. However, operators need to document how these buffers are determined. In many instances, operators use 660 feet on either side of the pipeline because this is the number that's mentioned in API 1162. And that might be sufficient, but operators need to document the buffers that they do use and identify that this buffer is adequate. Geographic boundaries are another source of identifying who needs to receive public awareness messages. However, inspections found that some operators didn't provide consideration for the stakeholders that might need this public awareness information but might fall outside the geographic boundaries. For example, you have border emergency responders or mutual aid responders or state police, 911 dispatch operators, utility companies, and other excavators who might perform work right near the pipeline facilities, but they have an office address that falls outside of that geographic boundary or buffer. Operators also lacked a process for updating lists and accounting for such things as returned mail, changing stakeholders such as renters or public officials, and getting baseline public awareness information to stakeholders that were invited to participate in meetings or training opportunities but then didn't attend. So bottom line, we want to make sure that everyone who needs to get public awareness information is getting it. As I mentioned earlier, inspections showed that some operators did not tailor their baseline messages to the products and facilities or the unique attributes. Additionally, some operators didn't tailor their programs to the audience. We had instances where high-level baseline messaging, the same information that was being provided to excavators, was also used for emergency responders. And typically, emergency responders need some more information than an excavator would need to do in terms of public awareness messaging. While operators' messages typically contained all the items that were spelled out in the regulations in Part 192 and Part 195, as well as the summary tables that are in API 1162, there were several instances where operators missed baseline messaging that were called out in the message content section in 1162, in the actual text of the document in Section 4. Some of the examples included information on integrity management programs and high consequence areas, as well as information on how emergency response officials can obtain access to an operator's emergency response plan information. Some operators were missing a process for defining how pre-testing of public awareness materials would be used. And this is, again, to test messages for their clarity, for their understandability and retainability before they're used broadly across the program. And while there was evidence that most operators considered other languages and conducted their programs in other languages, there wasn't a process that included information on the data that's evaluated and who's evaluating the data, the frequency at which it's reviewed, and the information that an operator considers significant, a significant number and concentration of people. Inspections also revealed that some operators lacked procedures when considering when additional communications is warranted beyond the baseline message. While operators have been performing supplemental activities, such as increased stakeholder notifications and participating in community events, operators weren't taking credit for all the good things that they're doing. They didn't have a written process for reviewing their program and determining the things that might suggest that more intensive outreach efforts might be necessary. And additionally, when it comes to messaging shortfalls, there were some master meter and petroleum gas systems who weren't providing messages at the required twice annually frequency. So when it came to the annual implementation reviews, there were shortfalls primarily with the lack of procedures in this area. Again, there were no procedures that defined the who's, the what's, the when's, the where's, and the why's. Who's involved in conducting these reviews? What's reviewed? When is it reviewed? What findings would trigger changes to program improvements? And how and when are changes implemented? And then how is the process all documented? We saw similarly, as we saw with the annual implementation reviews, we saw the same problems with the effectiveness evaluations, again, being the lack of procedures for how that's performed. With the effectiveness reviews, there weren't any defined metrics, criteria, or rationale established up front in the process to define what is effective versus what triggers the need for a change or a supplemental program enhancement. And when performing effectiveness evaluations, you have to measure the effectiveness evaluations for each of the 4 stakeholder audiences individually. Again, your public audience, your public officials, your emergency responders, and your excavators. And oftentimes we saw instances of pipeline operators performing surveys of the stakeholder audiences to see if they grasped the message as part of their effectiveness evaluation. And that's great, but many operators stopped at the survey phase. We need to make sure that operators consider the results that they've obtained, document their findings and conclusions, and then make modifications to their program as necessary. These are just some of the general observations by federal and state inspectors. We've seen a lot of effort that has been put forth and creativity when it comes to operators trying to reach out to stakeholders. However, there's still room for improvement. Overall, one of the common things that inspectors noted was that documentation needs improvement. This was evident in the number of enforcement cases where the lack of procedures was cited. I'll give you a minute just to read through these general observations. And I guess not only do these relate to the inspection findings that I discussed, but they also tie into the key findings from the SWOT report. Dr. Murray will be talking to you about that next, and I think that you'll see a lot of common ties here. By leveraging what we've learned from the inspections performed and the SWOT report, as well as what we've heard and feedback received from the public, hopefully we can all work together to come up with ways to improve public awareness among all stakeholders. And now I'd like to just wrap things up by leaving you with a few website links that might be helpful to you. The inspection forms and the enforcement guidance tools that the inspectors use to evaluate compliance can be found on the link listed here. And again, all the PHMSA inspection forms and guidance, not just specific to public awareness, can be found in this forms library. The PHMSA Stakeholder Communications website has an area that's dedicated to public awareness, and I've included the link here so you can go directly to it. Here you can find information on the regulatory information, a viewable copy of API 1162, information on previous public awareness workshops, and the information for this workshop will also be posted there. Frequently asked questions, where you can get also a copy of the SWOT report and links to other resources that might be helpful to you. And then just a few more links that might be helpful to you. The link to the Code of Federal Regulations, the Office of Pipeline Safety homepage, our enforcement website, and our regulations website. And I'd like to thank you all for your attention, and now I'm going to pass you over to Dr. Murray, who's going to talk to you more about the SWOT report.
Good morning. How is everyone? Good, great. Got a little energy back in the room. I know it's early, but we certainly want to have some really good dialogue. Karen did a great job. Thank you, Karen, for setting the stage to talk about the Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunity, and Threats report. Again, my name is Christy Murray. I'm the Director of Program Development here in our Office of Pipeline Safety. We're responsible for Damage Prevention 811, the National Pipeline Mapping System, public awareness, our excavator enforcement rule that just was finalized about a year ago, our CATS program, and many, many other externally faced efforts. What we did about 3 years ago, back in 2013, we had a public awareness workshop in Dallas. And during that time, we talked about some of our inspection results, and we talked about forming a working group to really advance some of our individual information sources, some of the data that we had seen, whether it was PHMSA, our state partners, industry, the public, emergency response officials, local officials, and excavators. We all got together and we decided it would be great to form a working group to really look at, let's get to the heart of some of the things that are really working well, some areas where we know there's some room for improvement. We talked a bit about some of those opportunities and what puts all of our collective pipeline safety public awareness efforts at risk in the terms of a threat. And that is where we landed, and that's what has gotten us to the place where we are talking about our SWOT analysis report. What you see here, if you have not had a chance, if you don't have a copy of the SWOT analysis report, they are outside of our meeting room on our table. They look like this. Feel free to grab one if you don't have one that you'd like to reference for the rest of the workshop. And for our webcast viewers, it is also located under the Documents section on our webcast link if you want to reference it as well. So one of the things that we did when the SWOT analysis, we called it a Public Awareness Program Working Group, PAPWIG as I'll refer to it. When we got together back in 2013, we talked about what our objectives were for getting together. We knew that that working group would be a short-term working group with a finite mission, and we would sunset after we concluded developing the SWOT analysis report. So we really got together to share different perspectives on the current state of public awareness. Where are we now? And each individual with their experiences, their organization's experiences, and those others who they represented, they brought those to the table. We had rich dialogue, open dialogue. We shared our inspection results. Others shared informational presentations and data that they had available to really make our conversation in-depth and rich as far as understanding what some of the opportunities are. So we got together, and our objective really was to develop the SWOT analysis report to really drive strengthening public awareness as we're moving forward. It was published back in May. It's available on PHMSA's website also, and it's open and available to the public and any other stakeholder who would be interested in its contents. The SWOT analysis report was intentionally not designed to prescribe, here's what we're going to do next. It was intentionally designed not to issue mandates or recommendations. It was really a tool to evoke thought, forward thinking individually, collectively in our industry, so that we can have more dialogue about in what ways can we really take more action, where it's appropriate, depending on who the stakeholder is who's looking at the document. So anyone can take a look at it and hopefully pull things away that they can move forward with and hopefully take more action. We had about 18 to 20 members on our working group, and here's really just a general overview of the type of stakeholders who participated in that effort. Now, just to give you a little bit of background on how a SWOT analysis works, it really covers two components. There's an internal component where those individuals who are performing the SWOT analysis because they have a collective interest in the outcome or somehow tied to it, they're looking at it in terms of their internal environment. What is it we're doing that's working well with our objective, pipeline safety, informing the affected stakeholders? And then there's an externally focused aspect of it. How are our messages being received, for example? What are the threats? What happens when we try to reach out to a particular stakeholder and we're not getting a lot of interest or feedback, or maybe they're not understanding it, or we're not reaching them in the right ways? So what we took a look at is how are we working and what are some of the influences that may impact how we go about improving public awareness. So we also talked about a number of different areas. So we sat around and we said, okay, so what do we want to do a SWOT analysis on? You could do one huge one, or you could break it down into more manageable topics. So we decided to use a topical approach to looking at those SWOTs. And then once we took a look at, we analyzed each area. We had about 14 different areas. We also decided, okay, we'll put those together and then look at them holistically to identify what are some of the common emerging themes that we're seeing across some of these different areas, and what are some of the differences. And ultimately, that is what we use as the basis for determining what our findings are that eventually went into the SWOT analysis report. These are the 14 areas I mentioned, and I'll just highlight just a few. So when we think about public awareness generally, we think of it in terms of, as Karen mentioned, our regulations, 192, 195 as it pertains to public awareness, API RP 1162, the recommended practice, which really focuses on what are the operator's requirements and what are our requirements for operators to implement and execute their public awareness programs. But we, in our discussions with the working group, we knew that public awareness was broader than just compliance. We knew that it was performance-based, and it was definitely in all of our interests to try to move the needle when it comes to behavioral change. So there's two different objectives we focused on. One is the pipeline operator public awareness program, which touches on the requirements in our code. But we also took a more broader collective industry view. How are we all showing up when it comes to public awareness with our role in educating and informing the public? We also included public stakeholders, emergency response stakeholders, et cetera, because we were interested in some of the more targeted stakeholder opportunities that we could derive. In addition, we looked at the frequency. We looked at message content. We looked at how we're evaluating effectiveness from our public awareness programs. What's interesting about the effectiveness evaluation, out of all the areas that Karen Gentile mentioned from our inspection results, I would say that was the weakest area of all. So we knew just from the inspections and the dialogue and other information sources we were able to look at, this is an area where we would certainly want to focus more attention moving forward. And even though API RP 1162, the second edition, is not currently incorporated into our federal code of regulations, we also know that there's a lot of stakeholders who invested a lot of effort into the development of that edition, and many pipeline operators who may be using the second edition to support some of their efforts. So we wanted to take a look at even that second edition and say, where are some of the gaps and some of the opportunities as we may consider a future edition or revisions in the future. Now, this is just one snapshot. I'm not going to go into the whole report because it's available for you, but I just wanted to give a sense of how it's broken up. So we took a topical area. For example, this one is public official stakeholder group. And we focused on the strengths first, which is one of those internal components, and so are the weaknesses. What is it we're doing well? What is it we could do better in terms of weaknesses? And we really just talked through and documented those as we looked at some other side information, reports, presentations that were available. And then we looked at opportunities. This is where you start to look externally. Opportunities is where we can say, what can we do to improve how our messages resonate? Are we reaching the right people? Are they getting involved in the process, et cetera? And then threats. What hinders our collective efforts from being successful? And that's the case for each of those 14 topical areas. Now, what you'll see in the SWOT report is there are 9 findings that are highlighted toward the beginning of the report. Now, as I go through these 9 findings in just a little bit of detail in the interest of time, please know that you really have to read each one of the topical SWOT analysis to really get more of a comprehensive view of some of the opportunities and some of the key emerging themes. We just called out some that we thought were notable. But depending on your interest in public awareness, you may find some, you may want to go directly to particular topical areas and focus there, or you may want to review them all. But the first one really touches on how stakeholder input has certainly influenced how we view public awareness, how pipeline operators implement their programs, drive towards continuous improvement, and even more. There was a lot of agreement that our regulations help to drive consistency. Operators certainly learned a lot from the experiences of stakeholders and their own experiences to apply lessons learned and incorporate those back into their programs and ultimately drive towards continuous improvement. Now, some notable opportunities. So what I won't do today is focus on the weaknesses per se, but it's really towards the future and the opportunities we have moving forward. I think we spent a lot of time on the strengths and the weaknesses in the past. But one of the opportunities noted here was that there's certainly an opportunity to clarify what's expected in our regulations and requirements. Does anybody disagree with that here? Any hands? Okay. Well, so we recognize that there is an opportunity to strengthen our regulations, make certain things clearer for operators who certainly are making strides to comply, but making sure we give them room for flexibility and also innovation in their efforts. We also know that there's opportunities to use consistent general messages. There's a lot of common pipeline safety messages that I think we collectively have in common, not just pipeline operators, but by having consistent messages, I think it may resonate better with some of the stakeholders we're trying to reach and we're having a difficult time reaching. And also there's an opportunity for continued stakeholder involvement. So while pipeline operators have their mission to implement and execute their public awareness program, PHMSA and NAPSR and our state partners have their mission to oversee those requirements and to also get involved with outreach and educating the public and other stakeholders. We know that collectively we must keep those who we're trying to reach involved in the process. And that's a common theme throughout the report and a common theme throughout our discussion today. The second finding talked about 1162, the first edition, and how it did provide a solid framework to build on, to drive for continuous improvement. Some of the notable opportunities were that collective body who helped to develop the first and the second edition, they came together to share their best practices. What's really working? How do we benchmark things that we're struggling with to find out better ways to do it? How do we improve our public safety campaigns? And we also know that moving forward, we can do more of those things, and I look forward to some later discussions today that touches on that. And we also know, and as Alan mentioned earlier, with the safety management system practice that's available, 1173, that there is an opportunity for us to, as a part of our public awareness efforts, take a look at what's already been developed and look for synergies and alignment across some of the recommended practices, like the SMS recommended practice, to see what is applicable to public awareness. What are we already doing? I believe there are some areas where we're already focusing on from SMS in public awareness, but there may be some opportunities to move the needle. The third finding really focuses on collaboration. So there's been a lot of indications that collaboration among stakeholders are certainly effective. A lot of times, pipeline operators who share corridors or general locations, they're inundating the same affected stakeholders with similar messages. So there's an opportunity, and many operators are already collaborating and developing collaborative messages today. And we know from an opportunity standpoint, we can do more of that. One of the things the working group talked about is it'd be great if we had national communication messaging. So there are some things that are in the existing public awareness baseline required program that may really need to be rolled up into more of a national industry-wide program so that operators can really focus on some of the things that make their assets different with their public awareness activities. So we'll talk a little bit more about that today. Also, we can understand what's important to the stakeholders. There's a linkage between this one and making sure we keep stakeholders involved. The best way to know it is to ask and have them be a part of the efforts. And then use compelling messages. So as we look to possibly advance the dialogue around national communication messaging, we really need to be strategic with how we could develop compelling messages that quickly grabs our audience's attention, hits the key points that we really want them to take away, and give them back their time. Everything is so electronic, digital, mobile, instant. You're not going to have a captive audience but for maybe 3 to 5 seconds. And so we need to really make sure we maximize those opportunities. And then, of course, there's our esteemed collective National 811 Call Before You Dig campaign. The group also agreed that that is working. It's working well. It's a simple message. It's a consolidated effort throughout the industry. And it's a great way to, it's a perfect example of how a national message can really gain a lot more visibility and recognition among those folks, stakeholders we're trying to reach, by having the same message by many being populated. To excavators, time is money. They travel between different states. Each state has different laws. And we're at a place now with some of our own internal enforcement work where we're actually in the process of evaluating each state. Those states that don't have strong, effective damage prevention enforcement programs will be deemed inadequate this year. And PHMSA will likely step in some egregious cases and enforce excavation laws in states that aren't doing a very solid job of it right now. It's all really interrelated. And part of what we can do from an opportunity standpoint is make sure that our messaging to excavators are worded in a way that's, again, is going to really resonate with that group so that they can recall 811, be willing to use it. And also, we definitely have an opportunity to further explore comprehensive ways in getting the word out to the excavator community. With the new laws that PHMSA now has the ability to use and authority to use, it's very important that we don't just talk about 811, but we collectively talk about the fact that things are changing with the laws and start to educate those who may not be aware that laws are different in each state, but also those states that don't have effective one-call laws and requirements, that they could be subject to federal enforcement as well. And that's a different paradigm shift where we are right now. The fifth finding really focuses on the many examples that pipeline operators have with communicating to and with emergency responders. A lot of great work has been done with regard to emergency responders in recent years, but we know that there's still more that we can do. There's no single uniform training entity for emergency responders, so we are focused on working on a state-by-state level to make sure that we get infused and institutionalize some of our pipeline safety messages and information into their training and certification curriculums. Also, opportunities, we think that there's an opportunity to pool resources to reach out to emergency response communities. One of the areas you'll see in the SWOT report that came up, what is maintaining liaison? And the 6.5 years I've been with PHMSA, I've probably heard a dozen different interpretations on what that means depending on who I'm speaking to. And that certainly came out of our discussion with the Public Awareness Working Group. And so we'll talk about, and you'll see presentations throughout that highlight some of these opportunities, but Artie Buff will talk later about a model that was developed and spearheaded out of Georgia. And it's a great example, one of many, it's not the only, but it's one of many examples of how we can collectively work to maintain liaison, help facilitate richer conversations with emergency responders, and understand what their capabilities and limitations are so we can better help them. The sixth finding focuses on, and I touched on this earlier, program effectiveness. This was the area in our public awareness inspections that really was the weakest, and we knew there's a lot of opportunities here. There was difficulty selecting and measuring their public awareness efforts, operators' public awareness efforts. Also, there were a lot of comments expressed over the difficulty with measuring behavioral change. You can bring the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. How do we know if they've drinking from the right pond, et cetera? And so while we recognize it as a challenge, we're not willing to dismiss it as a key component of what we're doing. If we're not working to understand, is what we're doing working through behavioral change, getting our affected stakeholders to take behaviors and actions that will keep them safer, keep the environment safer as a part of their shared responsibility, then we're not focusing where we really need to focus. So behavioral change is here to stay, but we certainly have opportunity to figure out how best to align our measures with our efforts. So we'll do more of that in the future, and making sure that we have realistic measures for the change that we're ultimately trying to achieve. And also, there's certainly room and opportunity for us to clarify what we're looking for from a requirement standpoint, and I say we meaning PHMSA and our state regulators, what we're looking for with our public awareness evaluations. And that comes from us collectively working together to talk about processes, methodologies, sample size. We've gotten a lot of questions over what are you looking for, how do we know if we've reached out to an appropriate number according to PHMSA, number of folks with our responses, et cetera. So we certainly see this as a key focal area moving forward. The seventh, and Karen touched on this as well, how do pipeline operators document their efforts? Generally speaking, when it came down to their annual audits, effectiveness, program effectiveness efforts, there were actions taking place. But if you go back and look at their public awareness programs, there are certainly opportunities to better align some of their actions back to their goals, to some of the overall objectives of their public awareness program, and also making sure that they take credit for the activities that they were implementing that maybe they didn't think were connected to their efforts. The eighth finding really focuses on interstate pipelines and distribution systems that are different. So you have your larger transmission lines, and then you have your distribution systems that have a different uniqueness to them. And actually, I would say findings 8 and 9 kind of really are very complementary to each other. But LDC customers generally have an awareness of the fact that they have a distribution line in their community, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our messages, the more we inundate them with messages, that they're really resonating over time. So there's still some unique opportunities that we'll need to take a look at to strike a balance between we're getting out a lot of information to them, but how do we make sure we're not desensitizing that audience when it comes to some important safety messages we want to convey. And also with finding 9. Here we have the affected stakeholders of small distribution operators who have other unique needs. So how do we take advantage with our opportunities of our national and collaborative messaging for baselines with this audience group, and take a little bit more time to understand what are the uniquenesses that operators will need to focus on as a part of their public awareness efforts, and then making sure those uniquenesses and what we're looking for with our requirements align with our regulations. So additional opportunities and work moving forward. Then there were other gaps that aren't in the top 9 findings that are in the front of the report. And these are just some that emerged as you take a look at the report. But certainly, how do we handle active pipeline assets, new operational pipelines? So how do you go from a newly constructed pipeline to, bam, it's operational? At what point do you reach out and communicate and make the public aware? That's going to be a fun conversation to have and to figure out how we close the gap with where we are. In our current regulations and API RP 1162 first edition, we focus on normal operations. It doesn't focus a lot on maintenance situations or at what point will you engage the public or other stakeholders when a pipeline is operational. it's time. It's time to take a look at some of these areas. If a pipeline is converted, if it's reversed, if there's transfers, at what point do you reach out and share with the affected stakeholders that something has changed? And that's really the essence of what you see here. How do we address the changes with pipelines as we move forward? And how do we align it with SMS, where it's applicable to do so? And then post-accident and incidents. I know we have our emergency response section of our code, and certainly don't want to step on the toes of any of those requirements. But what we find, and the CATS managers can certainly attest to it, and others within PHMSA, immediately after an incident or an accident is an unfortunate time, but it is also a unique opportunity. It's a unique opportunity to use that captive audience, which we say on the front end when we're being proactive is very difficult to grab their attention. I guarantee you have it after an incident. How do we make sure we are strategic and deliberate about using it as an opportunity to promote more pipeline safety awareness, but also reaching out to those who are affected by those incidents to make sure that we're not just focused on getting the incident back intact, but also that we care about the people side. We're talking with the people. We're communicating with those affected. More is to come. So in conclusion, there's a lot of challenges that still exist with our efforts, collective efforts with public awareness. We've come a long way. And with this SWOT analysis report, it certainly highlights that we have an opportunity to close even more gaps, to address gaps that we've heard collectively throughout the years. We'll need to strike a balance between being prescriptive, what's in our requirements, and being more performance-based. So we'll be having those kind of discussions as we look to take action. And we'll talk a little bit more about those this afternoon. We certainly know that there may be some clarifications that are warranted from our federal regulations and compliance processes, inspection, the way we do inspections, the questions we're asking. That will have to align with any changes we make from a regulatory standpoint. And also, there may be clarifications needed from a guidance or recommended practice standpoint. We certainly want to make sure we keep the stakeholders involved and focus on national collaborative messages where they're most critical to do so. And as hopefully a viewer or reader of the SWOT report, don't just stick it on the shelf. If you work with or you're involved or you have an interest in public awareness, take a look at it. Highlight a few things that really resonate with you that you could make a difference. If you were to do one or two things differently based on what you see here that could make a huge impact, find out what it is and think about it, and maybe be prepared to share or it may come out of our discussion this afternoon. Again, our focus moving forward is on focused action, strategic action, individually as an agency or a regulatory body, but also collectively with the pipeline industry. So with that being said, again, a few more resources where you can find the report online. That concludes my presentation. What we'll do now is we will take questions from the panel, and then after our Q&A session, we'll take a break. And after the break, we're going to advance our conversation. The second half, from here through the end of our workshop, will be focused on that action. What are we doing moving forward from various different stakeholder perspectives? So at this time, I will open it up for any questions for the panel. We have several cast managers with microphones who will be happy to share it with you. Just raise your hand.
Yes.
And
First, I'd like to mention for the webcast viewers is we had a small glitch. If you reload that webcast, and then if you submitted questions before through that, reload that web page and then resubmit it just to make sure that we get that in. So open it up to questions.
Hi. Is this on? Yes. Is it on? Okay. Thank you. A friend who's a former first responder in Wisconsin, she took Enbridge's online safety course for first responders because she lives near the Dilbit line 61. And she complained that they never addressed a full-bore rupture of crude oil, let alone dilbit, which of course presents additional dangers. And given what happened at Marshall, Michigan, I think it's irresponsible not to prepare first responders for the worst possible scenario. And could PHMSA add this as a requirement?
So to make sure I understand your question, can PHMSA add as a requirement to pipeline operators to specifically
Go over the worst possible scenario of a rupture of their pipeline when they are training first responders, not just some smaller incidents that they trained them for?
We'll certainly take a look at that as a part of our efforts moving forward. And thank you for that question. The emergency response training it happens several different ways. Pipeline operators definitely have a role to play with sharing components of the emergency response plans, which contains some of that information. But in addition to that, they're responsible for their public awareness requirements and reaching out. But also, emergency responders participate in those tabletop drills and exercises with pipeline operators. And that's something that we'll definitely take back as a part of those drills to focus more, if we're not doing that as much collectively as an industry, to figure out how best to make sure those drills and exercises are more worthwhile to their needs. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question for Karen. Since you changed the methodology for evaluating public awareness programs, are you going to still be able to get the good information that you got from the initial assessments?
Are these my, yep, okay. Yes, while the methodology for conducting the inspections has changed in terms of the tools used, the regulatory requirements haven't changed. The regulations that were established back in May of 2005 are still the regulations that we're inspecting to. And PHMSA, along with state partners, continue to look at public awareness programs as part of their inspection process. So again, the regs haven't changed. We're still performing the inspections. It's just our methodologies and tools that we now have available for tracking those. It's not as manual of a process for assembling the results and looking at what the findings were, where we'd have to go back and look at paper forms and read through the inspection forms and documentation. Now we have electronic tools that we've moved to document the findings and the results.
Hi, I'm Susan Connolly from Marshall, Michigan. I will be speaking or asking a lot of questions today, kind of going back and forth and maybe repeating some things. One thing I did notice today, and I'll just make my own personal observation, is that a lot of this today is operators and government entities that are speaking and presenting, and stakeholders. I don't see too many public representatives speaking so you can hear the public. So maybe in future workshops, there could be some public presenters that can give a little bit of a personal perspective. The other thing I wanted to mention as well is when you're thinking about, and I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. It's been a long time since I've done this, so I have to get comfortable again. Comparing the risk, what you may see as a risk or a concern, it may be completely different what the public sees. So you have to look at all perspectives of what you may find as minimal, maybe something very concerning to the public. And when you are looking at the public to speak with, I'm also here on behalf of CERT. CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. So that may be a really great organization to work with when it comes to public, because we're individuals that are concerned for communities. We have a lot of different ways that we reach out to the communities and working with first responders, so I think that would be a great organization that I would love to open up and work with all of you about.
Thank you for the comment. Yes.
Actually, may I follow up on what the lady said? Ma'am? Yeah. So I take your points. And on the second point that you made in terms of points that the public is very much conscientious of and finds very important that we may necessarily not be paying as close attention to, do you mind giving me an example of what you're thinking about so I can just help kind of conceptualize where you're coming from?
Yeah, sure. And I have a very loud voice. Once I get comfortable, I can speak probably louder than into this microphone. Yeah, I guess you're talking about like what you may find as a concern as compared to the public. Is that what we're referring to?
Yes.
I guess sometimes when you were talking about inspections, it's just general observations maybe that I know just from, of course, relating to the oil spill in Marshall, that
Yes.
some things may be things that you completely understand and may not find as a concern, but then the general public may find something so minimal and so trivial in someone who is so familiar with it and well-versed, whereas we may find it very concerning. And if we don't have that open communication about all aspects, that's where the public may start to find concern and distrust and dishonesty. So maybe we can have a little bit more open communication even about the most minimal things. And I can come up with a list of ideas and topics, and while I'm sitting here, I'm making little notes. So it's something that I'll share with you, and just even having a few people within a community, because we all speak to each other.
Yeah.
And then if there can be one representative for the people to work with Enbridge and other pipeline and PHMSA, I think that would be a great basis. I hear all of these workshops and the SWAT, and I just keep writing down on all my notes is public, public, public. I'd love to know who these public people are. And if there was someone within my community or my area, I would love to know who that is, because I have no idea. So possibly the public representatives let communities know who they are, who we are working with all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kesley Tweed. I'm the Public Awareness Manager for Enbridge. So thank you very much for your comment. It's very timely because we just completed an effectiveness evaluation of our online training. So we're looking at how we can improve it for the future, and some specific scenarios are something we're definitely looking at. And the online training, it's based on a training that was developed by the National Association of State Fire Marshals. So we've taken that, we tried to add an Enbridge perspective to that, but it is something that we're looking to improve and put out some changes in the future. So I'll definitely take that back. Secondly, just wanted to ask a question, probably to Christy. You mentioned and talked a lot about national campaigns, and I was just curious what sort of specific role you would see PHMSA playing in that. How would you help facilitate that or support that going forward?
Stay tuned.
I thought I might be getting ahead of myself there. Very good.
We will. I'll be happy to elaborate on that in a little bit later in more detail.
Dr. Murray and all on the panel, thank you very much for this presentation. I'm Linda Farrell. I'm with Pipeline Safety Coalition, and I did write down some notes because there's so much to cover here today, and you've done a fabulous I do want to echo the concern that even in the list of stakeholders in your SWAT report, I don't see the public in great view to the public. And we hear that a lot. We hear from the public that they want to participate more with PHMSA. And so I see that as a great opportunity as you're moving forward. Whether it be a representative of the public geographically or by pipeline operation, which would also technically be geographically. But I think that's a real opportunity. We attended the Clean Pacific spill response conference in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to point to a couple of things that were noted by the industry and by the emergency response teams at that conference. One was that, in their words, we need to engage the public more early, inciting, and before bad things happen. And one of the and I heard that in every session that I went to. So I'm really very, again, I see this as an opportunity for PHMSA and for the public to start to engage with more transparency. And if we have industry that is also realizing that we need to engage in both siting and emergency response, I think that's a really positive, good opportunity as well. One of the things that we saw was that in the Mosley spill, the Yakima tribe, who, by the way, got a PHMSA technical assistance, trained their tribal community on emergency response. They were actually the first responders, and so there was a lot of applause to the Technical Assistance Grant Program and to the Yakima tribe for their stellar response in that case. So we applaud much of what is being done here, but as far as the 1162s go, in Pennsylvania, I can tell you they're pretty much referred to as wine and dines. And that's a shame. I see the opportunity again for a lot of change to be made here, and wonder if the public could be engaged more in the process of what a workshop is, what a public awareness workshop is. What does the public think that they need to hear in these workshops? Again, that brings in the very good suggestion that the public be more involved in the review of this process. And it also speaks to the ability to create consistency in a national messaging system. Bring the public in at the very beginning. It's a very holistic approach that people want. They're asking for the ability to speak and participate with PHMSA more. And the last thing that we would suggest is that perhaps the scheduling of workshops, these public awareness workshops, not be on a calendar year, but perhaps we look at providing these workshops consistent to when a pipeline activity is occurring in a community, so that you really have that opportunity to engage the public. And we would say, as an organization, Pipeline Safety Coalition educates the community on what we call what you need to know and why. So we include from the drill head from the well to the distribution line or to the consumer. And we find that people do want that information. They want that holistic approach. Thanks again for all you're doing.
Thank you for your comments.
I might add, now, Linda, appreciate your comment. I would just say, I mean, if there are other outlets we should use too. I mean, we typically communicate, obviously, with Pipeline Safety Trust and others, but if there are other outlets perhaps we should use to broaden our outreach, you know, the public voice is very important to us. So I want to make sure we're comprehensive in that coverage, and so we'd appreciate any input. Certainly. Right.
Karen has been invaluable to us, particularly in the. Thank you. Karen Gentili has been a fabulous resource to the community, and I think she can probably attest to the numbers of calls and emails she is now receiving. But that's a good thing, because people are asking questions and they're getting very accurate, transparent, and very precise answers to their questions. And they may not like the answers all the time, but at least they know that they have the answers. They understand the process better. They understand the regulations better. They understand the impacts better. They understand that Karen is someone that they can go to, and they know that they're going to get the straight answer. And that's really important to the public.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate all the help that you have done in pointing people in the right direction. The more that, as questions come up from the public, feel free to point them in the direction of the community assistance and technical services managers in each of the regions. We are there to help and answer questions that the public might have regarding the regulations and what our jurisdiction is and pipeline safety. So we're happy to help. Thank you.
I'm Rebecca Craven with the Pipeline Safety Trust, and I'll speak after lunch about my role in the Public Awareness Working Group and going forward, but I have a specific question for Karen. You talked about the inspections at this point being focused based on some element of identified risk, and I wondered if you could speak to that and what exactly you mean by identifying that risk. Is it a pipeline risk, or is it a risk of violating the public awareness regulations? What does that mean?
Each of the regions look and work with PHMSA headquarters to evaluate. They use a risk model where they look at different factors such as time since last inspection, pipeline mileage, where that pipeline is it in high consequence areas? Have there been any accidents or incidents on the pipeline? These are all things that go into the model and tool. I don't have any real specifics, but again, it's a modeling tool that's used to forecast what those risk areas might be to focus an area for the inspection. And then inspectors use their own research that they use prior to and in preparing for an inspection and ask preliminary questions to the pipeline operator to also see if they see any problem areas as part of the screening process during the inspection. So an inspection can have the possibility to take different avenues. If in some of the screening questions, things appear to be okay in a certain area, that might not be an area where we might want to focus our inspectors' resources. We might want to go to another area, where there might be some issues that maybe have been identified.
Thank you. Are there any questions for webcast viewers? None so far? Okay.
Hi, and thanks for your work presenting here today. Appreciate it. My name is Michael O'Leary. I traveled here from Portland, Oregon. I represent the Association of Northwest Steelheaders. We're a 1,500-member fishing club, and we care about clean water. And a number of the transmission lines in Oregon and Washington have a number of river crossings, so that's where our fishermen are visible and know the area, and that's where their livelihoods are dependent on clean habitat. It's an $800 million economy in our state. It's thousands of jobs, tackle, boats, etc., hotels. And my question is hopefully a simple one, but one where I just need to get started with, which is where do I find the public awareness inspection reports so that I can identify what needs to be tuned up in my neck of the woods?
I'll take that question. In terms of the actual inspection forms, the inspection forms that an inspector uses are on our website, and then the enforcement page has the information in terms of there are any enforcement cases as a result of the inspection. The actual inspection documentation itself isn't posted. It's the results of those inspections. Correct. The information would have to be FOIA'd if you were looking for any specific documentation specific to a particular inspection. But an inspection in terms of if there were any compliance actions, all of that information is posted on PHMSA's enforcement website.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that was a very informative and rich dialogue for the first panel. Let's give all of our panelists a round of applause. Thank you. We're going to take a brief break and come back at the top of the hour to start panel 2.